Hey, this is Gene from the Assisted Living Network. It's important to have the conversation with your parents when it's time to move into assisted living. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. I've had this experience personally, and it was very awkward. It was very odd and felt uncomfortable, and it felt a lot like the roles had reversed. You see, when you're a kid, you listen to your parents and do what they tell you to do. When you become a young adult, you become independent, you do it your way, always thinking back and remembering back to the lessons that you learned. But as someone gets older, 70, 80 years old, they start to need help and they start to rely on us much, much more. So at some point, they may need assisted living. Now let me lead you up to that and then show you the conversation that you need to have. It's kind of awkward, but it's so important and vital to have it. You see, that adult has been independent and now they're losing that independence. They're not going to ask you for help. Hey, can you drive me to the store? But when they get in that car, you know, and they know too, that they're in grave danger because they cannot see that well. They can't respond that well. At night, there's stars in their eyes. They can't see out the windshield because of headlights coming towards them. That's a scary phenomenon. And yet if they have to get somewhere, doctors, store, a friend, they're going to get in that car and they're going to go. We've all seen it before at some point where there's just a head above the steering wheel, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. So that's usually the first conversation a lot of people have. Hey, you know what, Mom? Instead of you driving the car, I think you should call us to help you. Well, you just took away their driving privileges. The role has reversed. Do you remember when you were 16 and you had to earn your license? You had to prove to them that you were responsible enough to drive the family car? I know I did, and I know I failed a couple of times too, and Dad and Mom, they were kind of upset at me, but now it's reversed. It's Mom or Dad that you have to take the license away, the car away, the keys away. And at some point, the realization is it's not a maybe, it's a we have to. So at that point, that's kind of the first conversation. Mom, Dad, for your safety, for everybody else, it's probably best if somebody else drives you. Now you have to decide with your parent what that looks like and what that really means, but that loss of transportation is a big one. When we talk about when somebody needs assistance, loss of transportation, that freedom that we got when we were 16 or 18 with that very first license, we're now taking away when they're 85. That can be devastating for some seniors and some adults. As a matter of fact, I'm going to suggest to you that maybe if they need that additional help to move into the assisted living with 24-hour care, they may want to have that car there. They're not going to drive it, but it's going to be in that driveway so they know it's there if they need it. We've had a few seniors that did exactly that. We didn't allow them to drive. They had to ask for the keys, but they never did because we provided everything that they needed. But they knew in their heart, or at least in their mind, that they could get in the car and go. But they also knew that it was much harder to do that, and it was a little bit scarier to be on the road, especially the longer they had been off it. So one of the things is taking away that independence, but you have to do that and broach it very, very carefully. Having the conversation with Mom or Dad or a grandma or grandpa about moving into assisted living is a huge, awkward endeavor. You need to explain to them what's happening in their lives. They understand instinctively, but they don't want to hear it. Some do accept, but most kind of resist to some extent. Some very much so will resist and say, no, I want my own car, I want my own house, I'll make my own food, I'll cook it myself, even if it is in a plastic utensil on the gas stove. And that's when danger turns into a big, big problem. So when you notice that a parent or a loved one is getting to the point where they do need that help, they do need that assistance, it's up to you to transition them from where they are to where they need to go. You can start to look for appropriate places for them to go. So go visit senior centers, go visit assisted living homes, go visit big box facilities and get a feel for what's there. Many times a senior, when they're younger and not as in need, transitions better into senior housing that's more of an independent living situation, where they're in their own kind of townhome or apartment with their own kitchenette, little dining area, but they also have access to a cafeteria. They also have group activities. So a lot of times with the big box facilities, it's more of a campus. It's actually called a CCRC, Continuous Care Retirement Community. You move in and it's independent living. And then when you progress and you need more assistance, they hire somebody to come in And then if they need all the assistance 24/7, they move them next door into the assisted living and it begins. That's a transition that is easier for some. But most seniors would rather stay in their own home. They'd rather have their own independence, so they're going to stay there as long as they can. But at some point, somebody has to make that decision. Now again, that's uncomfortable, it's a little bit difficult. There are conversations that need to happen. And sometimes it's let's go visit a friend, or let's go to a home and maybe they can go in to volunteer. They can go in and say, let's play cards, or let's make a puzzle, or let me read to those people. And when I say them and they, what I'm meaning is maybe your parent is 80 years old and they're saying, well, I'm not going to move in with those old folks. So they go in there to become friends with them, play cards with them, make some puzzles with them, do some activities with them, go visit once, twice, 3 times. And then when it comes time to maybe they move into the home, it's not as foreign to them. Another way to do this is you as a caregiver, as a family member taking care of mom or dad, sometimes you simply need a break. What do you do if mom and dad really need you to watch them, but you want to go on a vacation? Well, there are some care homes, mine included, that if we have space, you can bring somebody into the home on a respite. That's a short-term rest. Could be a couple of days or a week or 2. So if you're going away or for a weekend or overnight, you can bring them to the home. Let the home take care of them 24/7. Now, they're also getting used to that home, meeting those people, creating those relationships are incredibly important, so it gives them a chance to kind of assimilate. And if they have a good experience, someday when you bring them there, they may just say, you know what, I don't want to go home, can I just stay here? That transition could be very natural, but at some point you have to have the conversation. And I do know that when I had that conversation with my mother-in-law about my father-in-law, it got uncomfortable. And I have to be very frank, it was uncomfortable because at that moment in time, my father-in-law, loved dearly, absolutely needed assistance, full-time assistance. It was too much for my mother-in-law to handle. But when we talked to my mother-in-law about it, she didn't want to hear it. She knew that he needed the help, but she was committed to help him herself. And I get that. The love in her heart, the commitment right to the end. They're both still alive. She is still taking care of him. Is it the best situation? I'm not sure. But I do know that we did have the conversation. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but we still love each other. She knows that I have her best interest in mind. It's not a matter of the cost, it's just what is the right thing, the best thing to do. So the next time we have that conversation, we'll have already had it once. So we'll have it again when the time comes, and if it's the right time, we'll walk through those same paces. You may be having that conversation sooner than you think, so get prepared, think it through. Go see some homes and opportunities and some things that you might be able to bring mom or dad into to get them assimilated to at least start the conversation. This is Gene from the Assisted Living Network saying do good and do well. If you like what you've seen and heard, please subscribe.